Okay, hello, ladies, and welcome to Chair.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey,
How's
Hi.
everyone doing?
So well, how
Good.
are you?
Good, thank you.
Tired.
yeah,
Same.
I'm with Sylvia. Very
Yeah.
tired. I haven't slept since yesterday morning. So,
Oh my
Okay.
God.
We got a birth.
well, yes, but that happened early this morning, so everything was just, yeah.
I
It was
hear
it
you.
was it was a fast birth too, and I went to my day job. So yes, I'm just
Oh
tired.
gosh.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Well,
I'm
thank
glad
you
you
guys
made
for
it.
spending your
Okay,
time. I really appreciate that.
of course.
Definitely,
Of
we're excited
course.
to be here.
Well, welcome to Chair. For those who may not be familiar with me, my name is Maxine Caesar, and Chair is a platform built to increase awareness for the women's health crisis that is currently ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to advocate, educate, and learn from women like you, whether from a professional standpoint or a patient's perspective. Women's health and maternal health specifically are at a huge risk because women are being dismissed, they're being ignored and being silenced. In turn, they are losing their lives, and it's unfortunate because a lot of these circumstances could have been prevented. So I was actually speaking to a friend of mine who had a similar experience, and it was such a disheartening conversation. I decided to, reach out to you guys and gather a group of phenomenal women like you who are educated on the topic and share your perspectives and your knowledge. So, phenomenal is an understatement. You guys share a great passion for what you do. I've ran through your bio, and I'm not. I seen your Instagrams, but I know that you guys work wholeheartedly. I know that you guys are very indebted in your work, and I appreciate you for that. And I appreciate that you're dedicating your time to women and your knowledge and guiding them throughout their pregnancy. Pregnancy is such a delicate period, and I don't think enough people realize how serious it is. So, why is this important to our viewers? Well, women are essentially the foundation of our families. And if we can assure quality care for women, our families can lead healthier lives as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm going to go on and introduce our speakers today. We have Tanya Ambrose. Hello.
Hi, Maxine.
Am I
Nice to
saying
meet
your name
you.
correctly? Please correct me if
Yes,
I
it's Tanya. Make sure you have that A in it because people miss it.
Tanya.
Yes.
Hi. So Tanya is an Antigua native who moved to the US to pursue her college education and has since graduated from Georgia State University with her bachelor's in public health. She is currently a doula and a postpartum doula specifically, and is very passionate about her work. Her motto is that every mother deserves the birth they desire, and I stand by that 100%. Next, we have Bria Brim. Hi, Bria. Bria,
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
Bria is the founder of Soulful Births, a birth and wellness company with a focus of Black maternal health. Her mission is to offer quality labor and delivery services. Diamond Rashad. She is a pediatric occupational therapist and doula. She is also the founder of Amira's Mamas, an online retail store for curated pregnancy boxes for new moms and parents. I love that. Sylvia Scarlett is a birth doula who co-owns and operates a Hava Birth Collective based
Mm-hmm.
in Central Florida. She advocated heavily for mothers to receive quality and equitable care for 9 years prior to becoming a doula in 2019. Next, we have Nikki Dawkins. She is a holistic reproductive health doula who specializes in all ranges of of fertility, pregnancy. She does it all. She is also the founder of Work It Moms, an organization that provides educational workshops, community events, and a safe space for mompreneurs in need to connect. I love it, guys. So I'm gonna kind of like open the floor for this question. You guys can all take your turns answering. So here we go. More and more women, especially women of color, seem to be enlisting in the services of doulas. For those who may not be familiar, please explain what exactly a doula is and some of the benefits of having one.
I always like to describe it. We always lead off that we're non-medical. For those of us like myself who don't have a medical background, some doulas do. And I think that's fantastic with the care they're able to enhance their services and the experiences that these women get. But for me personally, being non-medical, we're kind of bridging the gap between standard maternal health care to more empowered, positive, memorable experiences. That's, I think, how I kind of lead into it. And then I can talk your ear off for the next 5 hours on what I do. But in a nutshell, I feel like we kind of bridge the gap, allowing women, holding space so they can ask questions, feel heard, be heard, give them a point in time in their labor, realistically in conception. And Nikki, you deal with conception, right? Yeah, having a space and to ask questions even then. I don't think that our healthcare system is set up that if I were to go as a 19-year-old woman or 18-year-old woman having a gynecological exam, no one's talking to me about my reproductive health and how that can impact me in conception, from birth control, what's best. So I love that, Nikki, you do help women in that. I think it's so needed. We're so unfamiliar with our own bodies. So then to hand it over to the medical community, doulas help moms financiers also. So, yeah.
Yeah, and to add to what Sylvia said, we do provide emotional support, because that's really big. During that time, it's a sacred time. So you want to make sure you have someone outside of family, because sometimes they're family, but they don't often get it.
They mean well.
They mean well, but it's not always ideal. So that's one of our roles as well. And as Sylvia said, we're like your free library of resource. Anything you need, we're always on hand. So that's also one of our main roles, and it is a rewarding feeling just doing the work that we do and being able to just hold space, like you said, Sylvia, during this sacred time.
Yes.
I would even add to that too, aside from the emotional aspect, is for me a big thing is education. There's so much fear in the unknown that when parents go into, whether it's conception, labor and delivery, the postpartum period, having like a certain amount of information before you go into the delivery and before you meet with your midwife, it creates like a comfort for them. At least in my experience working with families. So I always say, I think the education piece also really empowers people to be able to speak for themselves and to know language that they may not be familiar with in certain settings. And it's like, okay, I know what that is. Oh, I saw my mucus plug. Okay, I know what's happening. And they're not as fearful anymore when they're very familiar with their body and the experience that's happening for them.
Absolutely. I love that.
It's totally like that, Bria. That's like 100% my main goal as a doula as well. It's just body literacy is what I say. I'm like, you need to be body literate, what your body is doing, what it's capable of doing, and what might not be right for your body. Because that's the other thing too. I feel like we go into these OB's offices and they're kind of telling us about our bodies, and it really needs to be the other way around. Let me tell you about my body. Because my body's going to do its own thing. I have a different diet. I have my own lifestyle, my own stress levels, all these things that are affecting me differently than everyone else. And so I think that's a big role of what we do as doulas is like, hey, you're unique, know your own body. And all of those things play into how your birth experience and your pregnancy experience is going to be. And I think it's important that we empower our clients to be able to have that confidence, like Bria said, and go into the office and be like, I know what's up, not you. Let me tell you about me.
Right. I think too, like, doulas who don't necessarily have that training to formally invest in a woman with education, we're connected, right, with other people in the birth community. Yeah. So while I might not be able to diagnose you and tell you this is, based off what you're telling me, this is what's going on, I have a general knowledge, but for someone to be educated formally. That's what I tell moms. It's like, I am an encyclopedia also. Like, you can come and like read about birth, but you're also going to get connected to outside resources, good resources that are generally there for your well-being, who probably aren't going to link up with your insurance, you know, and that's the biggest thing with resources. And it sucks, but worth the investment at the end of the day too. Like you said, Nikki and Bria, learn your body so you can advocate better for your body.
Right. So what I got from that is that doulas are pretty much an educator so that they can allow the woman to advocate for herself in in those experiences, right? So how can Black women educate themselves so that they can feel more protected during prenatal and postnatal care?
That's good.
That's good. So I would say one great place to start is to, if you can, start before conception, start before you get to the point where you're going to have a child. So think about learning about what it means to have childbirth and what it all entails going through that process, and enlist help. So that's what we're here for, to be those encyclopedias and help you figure out what you need and what you don't need, what you want, and things you haven't thought about before, going from how long you want to labor at home, what things you should eat during the pregnancy, what things you can do to prepare yourself for labor, movements, things like that. And so having that community of people so that you can ask those questions and get that resources beforehand, and not have to rely on the medical community that might not always be looking out for Black women.
Right.
I agree.
My answer to that would be to do your research. I think that's like the biggest thing that people don't do, because we're afraid. You know, doctors, they make us feel like they know everything. And sometimes we're afraid to ask them the questions that we think we're not supposed to ask them, like, what is your C-section rate? How many did you have? Why did they happen? You know, what is your natural birth rate? You know, percentage, how many natural births have you done in this hospital? And then also the hospital stats. I think those are questions that we don't really think about until it's too late. I know there are barriers to that. Insurance is a big one. Sometimes you have to go with a provider that's covered by your insurance. But I always encourage my clients to do your research and remember that you can switch your plan. Like that is.
Yes, I did that at 35 weeks. First time mom. And I didn't know anything. I didn't grow up with my mom. I just knew I was born by a cesarean. And she, being a young Black mother who just turned 18 a month before I was born, was told, you know, you're young, this could be hard, just have the cesarean. That's what that conversation looked like. So growing up, I knew nothing. I just knew I'd show up and a baby would come out. And so you don't know what you don't know, right? And it's so, you know, it's almost like we're working backwards, where it's kind of hard to have that expectation for the women in our community, even though we research the best iPhones, we research the best sew-ins, we research the best everything. But when it comes to birth, we've been kind of given this narrative that, oh, someone else will handle that. Like your birth, your body, someone else will handle. And so it's almost like the midwives, right? Traditional midwives, doulas were coming in, and it's like we're having to take a backhoe and like really just unearth a lot of misconception that the medical community does have your best in mind from start to finish and beyond, you know. So it's so hard because we, you know, the research is out there, the knowledge is out there, but where do you even start? Where do you even sift through it? And so it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to expect for a lot of moms, especially first time young moms. But even we have repeat clients or clients who come after second and third babies that they had no idea they had a say on whether they had to be hooked up to an IV. They have no idea that their doctor is their skill set that's even on their, you know, their WebMD bio is skilled surgeon. You know, I had a doctor who's WebMD, the first thing was skilled Army surgeon before anything else in obstetrics, you know. So it is like, I feel like we're working backwards, where we can't even be like, hey mom, the information's out there, figure it out. Or like, look up. I mean, that is a responsibility we all have as, you know, women. But I think us doulas kind of have our work cut out for us, and kind of redirecting the narrative and being like, hey, this is what's out there, you know, let me give. And really it is like, if you're a doula, you're not in it for the money because you are doing so much work on the free end before you even see anything on the back end. But a lot of what we do on social media, and I looked at all of your ladies' pages, is we're doing a lot of free education for the information that's out there and making it like right there in your face accessible, because it's a lot, you know. So thinking back,
also from a doula point of view, we can let our clients know that they can be you're your best advocate. And I think sometimes we forget that because we rely so much on these medical professionals that, as Sylvia said, oh, they're going to take us from point A to point B, and then there's so many missing information in between. So you also can do your research, but also be your best advocate, because again, only you know how you feel and what you're going through at the end.
Right.
So that's something we also need to stress, that you are and you can be
yes
a advocate.
Exercising your voice is so important.
Yeah.
I think one thing too that I like to educate anyone that's, like you said, either looking to conceive or has already begun this experience is that, your birth, you don't birth for the medical staff, right? Like they work for you. So at any point you can change, like we said, you can change providers at any point, ask as many questions as you can. I'm always big on that too. I'm like, it's like a job interview, right? It's like you're going in and you're interviewing people that are going to be a part of a really, your team for like a moment that's going to change your life. So it is important to know what's their philosophy on birth. If you have a particular way that you envision it, you can ask that and you would know right away, right? If you know that in your heart and in your spirit, you want a natural birth, but you walk into a hospital, they don't even have peanut balls, they don't have birthing balls, they have a high cesarean rate, that kind of tells you already the type of environment that you're in, right? Are you allowed to labor in water if that's something that you want to do? It's ask all the questions, things that mean something to you to help you make that decision. And I always say plan too. Like we said, that conception period, I actually had this thought the other day. A lot of people I see online are like, okay, give birth at home, give birth in a birthing center. But the reality, in my experience, that's a luxury. It's not something that can always be super accessible to people that are in our community. So if planning is in your future, maybe it's a baby fund, right? Maybe you know that you don't have insurance, but you are able to save because in the next 2 to 3 years, you would love to have a home birth. So you want to invest in a birthing pool. You want to give birth at a birthing center. I had a client who at 36 weeks wanted to switch from a hospital birth to have a midwife come to her home. And it was $5,000 that she didn't have in the next 3 weeks, So it's like things, again, like we've been saying, the research, do your research, right? Just ask questions and prepare. Obviously, life happens and things go ways that we don't always expect. But if you can prepare yourself as best as possible, then that's like really the starting point for you.
No, I love that. I think too, don't take no for an answer. I think that's the biggest thing is if you don't find what you're looking for, there is someone out there for you. So while you may go to one midwife, like you had said, switching and expecting to pay $5,000, I was in that boat with my first. I left my OB's office at 35 weeks and went to a birth center. And so thankfully for us, it was a little bit different. We had an HSA account, but that's not always the case. And there are community midwives who, for the state of Florida taking Medicaid, some do, some don't. And it's very discouraging when you find someone you love and they don't, but just don't take no for an answer. Find someone, find a way. Some of these midwives will barter too. I mean, if you have a service that they need, I will barter with you. You got a cow? Let's go, and goes, so I think the biggest thing too is don't take no for an answer. And even when you aren't still able to find the ideal birth space, because your birth environment makes up what? Does anyone know the statistics? It's like 30%. Your birth is influenced by your birth space, your birth environment. Yeah. Then that's where you get to work, like you lady said, advocating. Okay, you may not have this, but this is where you can meet me in the middle, Dr. So-and-so, hospital, whatever. This is how I envision my birth. This is what I'll be bringing. Can you provide this? And being willing to just take charge. It's there for you. But not a lot of women realize that. So I'm really grateful to be doing this, Maxine, and speaking with all you ladies to highlight, we own so many things in our own lives. Birth is no exception. Take charge.
Wow. Beautiful. According to CDC, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die of complications during pregnancy. Why is this happening so commonly in hospital settings, and what's actually being done about it?
I think we can all talk about that.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I think, is just historical.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of the people in the medical field that have been trained up to today have a really false impression of what we think is painful, and I think that's where a lot of it comes from. It's just racism, to be honest,
Yeah.
and it's going to take time for that to go away.
Mhm.
So it's really important again to do that research in the beginning and make sure your doctor is listening to you. Make sure
Yes.
you know who they are, and what they're about and what kind of patients they serve. There are some things coming out to help this, like the Earth app. I don't know if you guys have heard of that app,
Mhm.
by Kimberly, who's an amazing author of The Letdown, um, and just to kind of help guide us to what these providers are doing for people of different races.
Yeah.
But I think for us, it's just really important that we educate our own family better about this as well. And again, make sure that we're speaking up and we have somebody like a doula or even our partner, because I'm also very big on partner training to make sure that
Mhm.
they have, especially during COVID, right? Because I
Yeah.
know a lot of hospitals don't allow doulas. So they can be able to advocate for you and know what's actually going on and what questions to ask and what's okay and what's not. And just knowing your birthrights, super important if you're a
Mhm.
person of color.
Yeah.
I would also like to say I live in New York, and the numbers in New York City, the number is 8 to 12 times more likely to die than our white counterparts. So, like, this is also a human rights issue.
Yes.
It's
Yes. Yes.
systemic. It's a human rights issue. It's just like most things in this country. Everything has been built on it's racism, and it takes like it's so systemic that it's going to take like a lot of work, really, like we're saying, to really see that change. That's why it is important to educate ourselves as much as we can. Like we said, know your birth rights. There is this thing about how we can tolerate, a certain level of pain. Apparently, I didn't know, right? But that's a lot of that is a mindset that they have in these hospital settings. And it's also because it's a business. It's a very,
Mhm.
like, if you birth often in hospitals, you see how everything is like on to the next person. They're poking you
Yes.
up, talking about the person in room 4. Whole time you could be having something going on, but no one's present.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
most of it is like a lack of cultural competence, like you're saying, Bria.
mhm.
We even in this day and age, people are not even being educated in medical school about the different races or
Yeah.
what or go in depth. They may just touch the surface, speaking from experience, but then there's a lot more that goes into it. So that's a big thing. Like I said, it's gonna take a long time and consistent work for us to change that. But you know what? We're starting. We're getting there. Us
Mhm.
Yeah.
here, we're gonna do the work.
Yeah. I think too, it goes back to we kind of just taught that we can trust those who are, they hold these licenses or these
Yeah.
doctorates or masters. And I can't remember who one of you ladies just said it, but they don't have the time to create relationship and really hear what we're saying. And so for some women, they don't want to take hold of the reins and they don't realize the detriment to their birth, postpartum, and beyond, even their lives. And I remember one of my first doula births, and I feel like at that point, like these ladies knew what they were doing, but my client had a fast labor, and I was just super eager. And I'm in a very um, high traffic hospital, Winnie Palmer in Orlando, and I said, I'm here if anyone wants a free doula. And so they sent me to a room, and it was a language barrier, and this
I think her screen froze.
Yeah. Sylvia, are you there? Yeah, it froze
So
over there.
lost there.
Let me
Yeah.
reach out to her. Do you guys want to add to that in the meantime? Anything?
There's a phrase, I think it was from Malcolm X. He said the most disrespected person in America is the black woman. And here we are in 2021 and it's still the same thing. And I don't know. Again, that's why I feel like, one of the reasons why I became a doula, why you guys probably became a doula, is why it's so educated and empowered, because education is really key. Because being in this space, I'm realizing that not many people are educated when it comes to the birthing journey
Right.
or that experience. And I was like, wow, as Sylvia said, you get pregnant, you go have a baby, that's it. But there's so many different things in between that we're not educating. So again, our roles as doulas are that's very important, because again, we're not educating the public, especially our people, in regards to the different steps to pregnancy, or even before, during, and after. And that's a big thing, you know?
Right. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just trying to add her back into the chat.
Well said, Tanya. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I think, as you know, I feel like sometimes, we don't talk about things with our family, and I think part of that is also generational. We don't
Yeah.
share anything. We don't talk about fibroids. We don't talk about period problems. We don't talk about like any of that stuff. And then we get put out into the world, or like we're trying to get pregnant, or we're experiencing endometriosis, and we don't even know what's going on because nobody wants to talk about it. It's like this big secret that we hold. And I find even with some of my doula clients, I have to tell them like, hey, tell people you had a doula. Spread the word. Don't just keep it to yourself as this like secret that you had one. Like tell people you had one and how it helped you, so that way we can keep this going and make it more normalized to have a safe and healthy birth experience.
Yeah, because I had a client that she had 2 kids before, and then she just gave birth, to her third one, and there was some things that they didn't know, and so it was my role or my duty to educate her or educate her family about. It's like, you have 2 kids. She's like, oh, I didn't know what a doula is, which is fine. We're still trying to get the word out.
Yeah.
But as far as like the process, the laboring, because she bred her kids in a car, so of course she had different experience. She's trying to have a different type of experience now, and there were just some things that they didn't know, and I was like, wow, it's when I was like, education really is important when it comes to this journey, because you can get pregnant, you can carry your baby for however long, but then what happens after? What do I do before? So that's really key. Silva, you can resume what you were saying.
Oh, girl, sorry about that. What were you? Sorry, where did I even leave off? I was talking, and my friend texted me. You were cut out, girl.
It's okay.
Hospital. You walked in. You said, "Does anyone need a free doula?"
Yeah, as far as like there's this, I think a racial indifference, whether it's implicit or not. But I walk into a room and it's a mom who only speaks Creole. She's from Haiti, and I'm a brand new doula. And long story short, I'm asking, hey, what is this? And her bag for her catheter hadn't been
Changed.
Oh my gosh.
And has a bulge at the bottom where her bladder had enlarged, and she has a bulge where the baby's so backed up. And I just happened to walk in at that point, and they were like, oh, the nurse before me probably didn't change it. Those are the things that women are dealing with. It's not like they cut an artery during cesarean. It's not anything drastic like that. It's just missing small things because for whatever reason that woman was not a priority, that they would check those things, simple things, And then there's the language barrier, because not all women of color are American, African American. English is their first language, and so I don't know that we're equipped in the hospital setting to meet every woman's needs. And so that further proves how relevant how we don't know yet. This is still fresh. The impact of all of that, not having a birth advocate, not having someone who's knowledgeable can ask us questions. Hey, what's going on? Why is her catheter bag full? Why is and I will tell you, once they emptied that catheter bag, within like an hour and a half, that baby was born. And I had been there for like 17 hours. Not really comprehending what was happening to her, none of the care that she was given. And, those are the kind of things that happen on a day-to-day basis. And not everyone has a doula, not everyone has someone in that space saying, hey, nurse, so-and-so, can you tell me about what's going on? Why does mom understand why? So when it comes to that, I think the language.
Sorry, Sylvia, you're cutting in and out.
Yeah, let me see if I can fix.
But yeah, I think that pushing the agenda of having a doula, a midwife, or someone who is just educated specifically for birthing is so important, because family support is essential and it'll get you through. But having someone who is able to help you advocate for yourself, especially when you're a first-time mom who doesn't know much, who is, this is their first time experiencing this, it's so essential. So I think that we definitely need to push this and make this more popular, especially for women of color who are dealing with these complications. Situations like Sylvia had mentioned, like the catheter bag being full, that's a minor discrepancy, but that can lead to life-threatening complications later on. So, yeah. Speaking of first-time moms, first-time moms are often overwhelmed when listening to all of the things that providers have to say, all the opinions, all of the rules, all of the regulations. What advice do you give to your first-time mommies and on how to exercise their voice efficiently so that their needs are being heard as well?
For one, I would say everybody is different, right? Every birthing person is different. Everyone's lifestyles are different too. So for me as a birth worker, that's something that I go into everyone knowing that what one family needs, another family may not need. So it's super important to tailor that so that they get an experience that works for them, right? Some people need that extra physical touch, right? There's some people who don't, who really are like information heavy, and that's the thing that empowers them and that pushes them forward. So if you're expecting, it's really figure out what's important to you, right? What matters to you, what are some of your concerns, and speak on that. There is a lot of information. I just told someone the other day that there's so much information, right, about what not to do when you're pregnant, what to stay away from, what everything is, don't do this, don't do that, don't eat that. And it's very hard to find information about this is what you can eat, this is what you should do. So find resources again that could really help you with that part of it. Like that's not so much fear-based information, but very informative and that empowering information that will help you along your journey. There's no handbook, right? Like you don't know, like that's like advice for me that's really hard to give someone on what they should do, because everyone's needs are so different, everyone's lifestyle are so different. But just educate yourselves. Like that's something that they cannot take away from us, right? Like they can't take that away from you. Yeah.
And when you think about access, because we know in this country, access to healthcare or certain resources is very hard, especially in certain populations or communities. So as you say, education is going to be key. Sometimes it may be challenging, but there's so many different ways now that you can find the different resources. It doesn't even matter what your socioeconomic status is. So definitely educate yourself and just, again, like Bria said, go meet where your circumstances is, but it's going to be different, but we know access to certain information can be tricky or hard to find if we're being honest. So, it's just about, again, researching, being your best advocate, and just find small things. Because sometimes we think everything needs to be on a big scale, to reduce stress during pregnancy. There's just so many different things you can do to minimize. You just go for a walk, try to find me time, find someone that you can talk to, these different things. All these are things that you can do to help minimize the stress during this time outside of, other external factors.
Tanya, I was actually going to ask that. So could you guys add on to discussing the importance of reducing stress before and during pregnancy?
I think it's good to research, but also I'm like, get off Google, like stop looking at stuff.
Yes.
Because sometimes that's what's stressing you out is you're like, oh, am I hitting the right milestones in my pregnancy? Am I doing this? And like
it's said, so much information.
There's so much information, and not all of it is accurate or right for you. So I think sometimes it's important to like turn it off the noise a little bit. And I find this true during postpartum as well, because, the whole snapback and I should be, they're looking at all the pictures of everyone you're missing out and all this. And I'm like, just embrace this time away from that and focus on your body and yourself, and don't overwhelm yourself with all this information, because one website's going to say this, another website's going to say the opposite. There's one social media influencer doing this thing and then another one doing that. So it's kind of like, ask your doula, ask your midwife, and get the opinion of somebody that knows you, as opposed to just, taking in everything that you see online, because there's a lot of crap out there.
And also like trust yourself, right? And trust your body, and know that your body's always going to tell you sometimes if you really are like, I know this can sound like kind of cliche, but if you really like sit and be still sometimes, like you may eat something and it may make you feel uncomfortable, but you read that you should be eating that. But listen to what your body is telling you, right? Because again, one website is saying this, one website is saying that. Your body always sends signals to tell you when something may not be right. It just takes a moment to, like Nikki said, kind of disconnect from all the information and be still with yourself, because it's bigger than you just carrying a baby. I always say it's like, it's your mind, it's transforming, your spirit is transforming during this time. It's not just you carrying a baby for 9 months and like pushing it out and going about life. Like, you really get to, every part of you is like birthing a new person, right? So again, just listen to yourself, trust your body. Granted, there's some information that you should take, very seriously when it comes, but don't get so overwhelmed on like what this mom is using because she said it's the best pump and what she's using for the lactation cookie that she ate, but it has ingredients that you don't like, but you want to try it. Like, we get so wrapped up in all of the external things that sometimes the answer is already like, our body is telling us, our intuition is telling us, and no one knows you better than you. Yeah.
Following the rules is hard. For real. Yeah, following the rules is hard. I mean, it's safe, right? It feels safe. If my doctor said to do this and I need to do that, even though I'm feeling, adverse reactions or effects. And back to what you had asked, Maxine, like the effects of stress, it can cause low birth weights in your baby. And so, I mean, I don't know who mentioned it, but yes, it is imperative to your mental and emotional well-being, but also the physical well-being of your child, that you engage in activities that, aren't going to induce stress or, disengage from the drama. If that means cutting out social media 3 times a week or putting a limit on it, or it's putting boundaries with family members. Like, you cannot speak into my pregnancy. You cannot speak into my birth. These are boundaries, which again, those aren't the rules. We're told to be obedient, good women. And, we have to go against that grain when it does benefit us, and especially our child.
Yes, and I have to second boundaries and thinking about what works best for you, and not listening to necessarily people telling their stories in a way to scare you. Like, oh, I was in labor for this many hours and you're just going to be terrible once you have a baby, and you better sleep now because it's going to be terrible. Like, and just all those thoughts start to come to you like, oh, this is going to be terrible. I'm so anxious about this. And really just guarding your temple, guarding your mind from those negative thoughts, and having affirmations about what's going to work best for you and the kind of birth and kind of parenting journey that you want to have.
Absolutely.
Tell people to mind their business.
Yes.
Just mind your business.
Exactly.
Honestly, like Diamond, like you said, I had a client who told me, like, I met with her and she was like, okay, so I went out with a friend yesterday. She has 3 kids, and I told her that, I'm interested in breastfeeding, and she looked at me like I was crazy and I was going to hate it. She told me I was going to be in pain. So it created this fear in her now that she was like, do I really want to do this? Because this is someone, right, who's done this 3 times. So she knows more. So, you get,
How do you redirect them? How do you redirect that conversation when they're coming with a rooted fear?
One, acknowledge it for me, right? Like, I understand that that does sound scary, right? It can be a lot of work. That is all true too, right? Like, breastfeeding isn't the easiest thing for everybody, but it's something that you said you wanted to do. So honor yourself first, right? All you can do is give it a shot. If it doesn't work for you, fine, but make the decision to, because it's something that you wanted to make, not because you let outside voices influence something that meant so much to you. That's really, again, acknowledge the fear. Like, she was afraid, so I didn't want to discredit how she felt because her feelings were still valid, but I did want to remind her of, like, you said this was important to you, and honor yourself first before you take the word from somebody. So everybody's experience is different. Some people breastfeed kids until they're 5 years old, right? So there's, again, you don't know until you try it. Yeah, you don't know until you try it.
Yeah, my son was he was over 3. And obviously it wasn't around the clock feeding. It was definitely naps and night times and boo-boos, But no, I love that you said acknowledging the fear. And I think helping our moms understand when you're in those conversations where someone is bringing up their experience, right? It is good for them to listen, so-and-so, I thank you for wanting to give me some insight And I'm sorry for however that played out, whatever that conversation needs to look like on that end, but just let them know, like, I would like to protect my space. It's okay to say that. It's okay to tell a friend, like, I'm protecting my space, only taking in positive, helpful resources. And so while I sympathize you for what you experience, if you have anything positive you want to share to help me to either avoid that or just to encourage me, like, I'll take that all day long. But the trauma, I have to, like, put that to rest. And I don't think a good friend is not going to be mad about that, right? A good friend doesn't even realize that she's projecting her past. And we have to assume that that not everyone comes from a healthy household where someone honored their voice, right? And honored their needs and taught them how to advocate for themselves. So sometimes it's like, our job is counselor, it's for just basic life management. It's not even just about birth. Sometimes it's telling your mother-in-law, okay, I hear this, but thank you, but no thank you.
So, ladies, what are some key suggestions that you like to educate moms on that providers usually don't highlight?
For me, postpartum. I think that fourth trimester is very overlooked and forgotten, especially by OBs who have that 6-week gap. And, I think we focus so much on the baby and we forget about the mom and educating the mom on what her body does after birth, as well as not just during pregnancy and trying to get pregnant, but what happens after. And I know for me, after I had my first son, I was like, what the F is happening? Like, what is going on here? Why am I still getting contractions? Why am I still bleeding? Why can't I sit down comfortably? And then you're trying to breastfeed on top of that, and then you're trying to manage your partner, and then you have family. And I think the same thing coming in with the boundaries at postpartum is just as important. Who can come? How long can they stay? Sometimes just telling people, like, hey, go wash the dishes so I can hold and bond with my baby. Thank you. You know what I mean? Not in that way, a little nicer. But I think educating people and partners as well as what, letting them know what the mother is going to be going through, because it's a shocker for them also. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not a bounce back. They're going to be very emotional. Hormones change. They go up and down. And just, I think, finding ways to navigate that, and kind of like Tanya mentioned before about taking that time to find your space, still matters after you have the baby. I always tell my moms, like, hey, go outside for 5 minutes and just breathe in the air. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be long. Or one of my favorite tips to give moms is to, like, make a cup of tea and drink it while it's hot. And don't look at your phone or do anything else, but drink this tea and just think about it and just sit there with it and be happy for a moment and don't worry about nothing else. And just taking those small moments has a really big effect on how women go through postpartum. It's just the little tiny things. Have your meal plan done. Have somebody that's going to come cook for you. Mm-hmm. Set up those goals. If you're going to come, you better bring some food. I just had a baby 3.5 months ago, and that was my number one rule. Please go home. You need to bring me some food.
Okay.
So I think, yes.
I agree. I agree with you, Nikki. That's one thing. Everyone is always about, the 6-week mark, and then what happens after? How can we identify signs of, postpartum depression? And there are so many other perinatal, mood anxiety disorders, these different things that we don't talk about. And you, as you say, you're there feeling one way, you're wondering what is going on, and there's no one to tell you anything. Again, hire a postpartum doula. If you need help with cleaning, we're here, we can do that. If you want to, I just say, go for a walk and you want to leave the baby at home, you need help with someone changing and feeding, we are there for that as well. So that's an important part, because I think we sometimes neglect the postpartum or the fourth trimester for some reason.
Mm-hmm. It's so forgotten.
It's
so a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure for us, because that stupid 6-week thing, which I hate. Yeah. I hate even saying that, because I'm like, there's no limit. It might take 6 weeks for somebody and 8 weeks for another.
Yeah.
I think putting that marker on it puts such an expectation on us, especially, no offense, for like the partners, because they're like, oh, can't wait to get back in there. 6 months. And it's like, no, I'm not even thinking about that. I don't even have a libido for that right now, because my hormones are still not stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still trying to work on this breastfeeding thing, where I'm just getting back into the zone of feeling like myself. And now you're putting all this pressure on me because I hit 6 weeks. So I think that's something I try to avoid with my clients, is like, don't worry about that. You're going to get there when you get there. And I think making the partner understand that too is very important, because we don't educate them either. And then we get mad at them because they don't know anything. It's like, don't be that. How are they supposed to know?
To follow up with your saying, Nikki, too, about that, like I'm really big lately on this 6 weeks postpartum, as if like life is just supposed to just go back to as is, right? In 6 weeks with one doctor's appointment while baby gets a gazillion. The first year you get one, and then it's like you're supposed to be fine, right? You pushed out a placenta, so now you have a wound inside of your uterus that's the size of God knows what that could really take, right? Everybody heals differently. So 6 weeks for some could be 10 weeks for others. People, a lot of women get fearful too to have sex because they're afraid that it's going to hurt. And it's like, you know what, you don't, just because the 6 weeks is here you don't have to make that like the point of the 6 week mark, right? Just be happy that you and baby have also made it this far. And when you feel ready and you feel good enough to do those things, then like do those. There's too much pressure around, like you said, that postpartum period is all this pressure of like life getting back to normal when there is no, life is never going to be normal. Like you're normal again. Like
you don't have to have it all together either. It takes, I think that we're missing that part. It's a progress, everything happen one day at a time. Just try to focus on getting over one day, get into the next,
I think the danger too, like to tag on that 6 week postpartum mark, is that it convinces moms that anything beyond this is quote unquote normal. So in 6 weeks, that's like the time period that I'm supposed to nurture, hunker down. Anything past that, like I'm just supposed to deal with or not acknowledge because my postpartum is over. And like you said, Nikki, that could last for a lot longer, especially if you've had more than one child. You're going to experience some of those symptoms a lot longer. And some of them are the emotional. We tell moms you're going to experience your hormones flux. And by 6 weeks, everything should be healed. And we put this sticker on it, and it's not the case. So
it's like the party is just getting started at 6 weeks. Like like you're just getting finally into the groove. You're just really knowing your baby. Now there's milestones for them. There's so much to consider. Yeah, there's so much to consider in that time frame.
Yeah. I think another thing that I would highlight for moms that your doctors aren't necessarily going to acknowledge is the physiological aspects of labor. So we can come and support a mom with education. We can empower her with our voice. In the moments, we can provide her comfort measure techniques. We can speak life into her in transition. But if that baby is hung up on her pelvis and those ischial spines, I can woo-woo her, but that baby is still having a hard time coming through. And not all moms experience a normal physiological birth. And I think for most doctors, I don't know that they're, and forgive me if there is a doctor who's watching this and they're dying me to say this, but I don't know that is on like their radar. Where's baby in the pelvis? And I don't know if you ladies have heard of spinning babies. I'm sure you have. Yeah. They had a workshop that I took a couple years ago because I'm like, I need to know the why behind the why. I need to know why I would have a mom put her leg up, into a lunge, or why I would do an inversion if her labor is taking too long. And so I think for women to understand, like there's so much more at play than just breathing and bearing down, It's why, if you see me riding anywhere, I keep a pelvis in my front seat because it's going everywhere. I do my birth prep visits because I want women to see, like this is what it looks like from baby's point of view. And this is what it looks like from your doctor's point of view. There's a lot that happens between here when baby enters the pelvis, and there's a lot that happens on the way out. And I didn't know my first birth being with midwives, having left the OB at 35 weeks, even going to midwives, I still didn't understand why my right occiput anterior baby was taking a million years to make her rotation all the way around, and so I think that's another thing is moms need to understand that how you care for your body. You can walk 3 miles, but if you've got tightness or imbalances in your pelvic floor or in your sacrum, your sacroiliac joints, any of that, which leads to the question, are you seeing a chiropractor? Are you seeing an acupuncturist? And those aren't resources that are readily available to everyone, and that's where as doulas, we find a way, we do rebozo sifting or we do different techniques to help bring balance within mom and teach dad so he can be present for that pregnancy, that prenatal care, as well as labor and birth. But that's a big one. And if I ask a doctor, 9 times out of 10, if I say, where's baby in the pelvis? They're like, oh, they're head down. And I'm like, that's not enough.
I also like to highlight interventions, but from a place of obviously education and empowerment, not so much of fear, because I've also been in rooms where the mom's like, wait, what is that? What is that? Why? Right? So for me, it's super important to know, why did the doctor walk in, which I've had, and the nurse said, okay, you're checked in, we're going to put you on Pitocin. And she's like, wait a minute. And then they'll look, yeah. And she's like, you told me about this. I know what this is. I didn't ask for it. I'm like, so when the nurse leaves, like, she spoke to me. She was able to tell the nurse, like, I'm okay. I don't want that. Like, I'm doing really well right now. And I think that my body's going to be able to bring my baby aside without anything extra. So for me, it's like, okay, it's really important to know what are your options, right? What the possibilities in birth are endless, right? And not to scare you, but in those moments, you don't feel like someone is telling you what to do. You actually can make an empowered decision for yourself when you know. So for me, that's also really big. And like Sylvia said, just like the physiology of your body and knowing like what's happening and like, why does baby feel like this? And like, why does it, you should know those things as well, because it helps you in the end more than anyone, right? Besides doctor and us and everyone, your team, like it gives you peace to know at all times what's happening and to not be confused. Yeah.
I don't think women too, like we don't understand that trauma to the body lingers. Being in a car accident recently myself, I'm still, 9 months later, still having issues with that, in my lower back. And so for women who, even from CrossFitters and horseback riders, we assume that they're healthy physically, they're capable of this in one aspect, but we don't educate moms on like pelvic floor. I mean, can I say that like 10 more times? Pelvic floor health.
yes, definitely.
So, I agree, Bria. It's so much education. I don't know, where would you ladies even think, like, how do we make this not just the doula's job, or, and how do we make this information like out there normal, right? We know birth control. Everyone talks about birth control. There's every commercial about birth control. There's ads. I'm gonna say it right now, and I'm gonna go on Instagram, and there's gonna be birth control ads. But how do we get this knowledge that's so valuable and so rich for moms to have successful births, and not even by vaginal versus cesarean, right? Because we have moms who have cesarean births and they're still empowering, informed consent laden experience. But how do we do this? No, obviously it talks like this, but
I think also we have to get everyone on board, because sometimes there's still a little of a rift in a sense with the healthcare provider and doulas, to be honest, because sometimes they don't have the respect for doulas as they should. I mean, some are not coming around to the work that we do, but before they didn't. If everyone can be on the same page, we can come together. I think that would be a start, because people are gonna most likely listen to their healthcare provider, because they're still now learning about what a doula is or what we do. So if we can get them to be on board and actually just educate as well, that's our job, but just educate and empower. That way people can have the information that they need at hand. So I think it comes down to everyone being on the same page in that regards. So I think that would be a start.
If you know a doula and you also know someone that's expecting, send their information, send their Instagram, at least like, again, put the word out there that this type of work even exists, that birth work is like a field. It's a real thing. And we're really here to like make women feel seen, feel heard, feel safe. And again, some people just don't know about it. Yeah, some people just don't know about it. So if you know someone, if you know a doula and you also know someone that's expecting, I say too, start a fund, gift somebody a doula for them, like make it a gift. Like, I got this for you. Obviously you could choose if if this is something that you want to do, but I think that it makes for great gifts for people, or childbirth education classes. Like there's so much that we could be sharing out there to get people on board with the work that we're doing, and how we are really like changing lives, honestly.
And I think that was the significance of this discussion. I don't think a lot of people are aware that there are professionals here that are specifically there to help you through this process. And I'm so appreciative that you guys came and extended your time and helped somebody out there. You guys touched at least one person today with this video. Later, to like whoever sees this video, they're going to be informed, very much informed within this hour. And I appreciate that. And I hope that you guys keep pushing forward and keep pushing that narrative that there should be reform in healthcare and birth work. And you guys are doing it. You guys are doing it very well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
To wrap this up, I have one more question, and I want all of you guys to answer. So for women who don't have access to doulas or midwives, what advice can you give them when, them being first-time moms and wanting to just have that full, healthy experience?
I think I'll go like piggybacking from Brea. If you know someone is expecting and hashtags are a thing on Instagram, or you can utilize Instagram like Google, if that makes sense. And if you come across a doula, there are doulas who are willing to maybe do work pro bono or just negotiate, just whatever it is. We're not like Sylvia would have said, you're not in it for the money. You're here to educate and empower and just to support that birthing person. So if you know someone, just reach out. It doesn't hurt to reach out. Social media can be a good thing if we use it for that. So if you, again, find someone on social media who's a doula, just reach out. You just never know what can come of that. To be honest, it doesn't hurt. It could be yes or no, two answers, or you may end up making that connection and take it from there.
Inquire about payment plans too, right? Don't let money be the consideration that is the reason that you don't try, because like Tanya said, people will barter. I've done labors just because like I connected with a family and I said like I want to be in service of somebody else. So like this is on me, right? Because your well-being is way more important to me than the money, because that's always going to come. So you never know, like Tanya said, who you reach out to, what that person may say. I know that I offer, like, I call them like kind of like birth prep. So maybe it's not a doula, but maybe we sit for 90 minutes and it's like a childbirth education class, right? And I sit with I sit with your partner. We go over comfort measures, kind of like a crash course to give you enough information for if you're walking in the room with just you and your support person, he could be or she could be your doula, right? As well, for more than half the price. There's so many options of like ways to prepare yourself and your mind and your body and your spirit that it doesn't need to be limited to one type. We offer like a lot of information. So like Tanya said, we're always willing. And Sylvia said, you went on our Instagram, we're giving out free information all the time. Like people message me all the time. And I just love what I do so much that I'm like, if you need anything, just email me, because I just want to make sure that you're good, right? When I could easily be like, this is cost this much and this much. It's like, I really want like Black women to thrive and to live. So you gotta love people to do this type of work.
Yes, yes.
Yes, and a lot of Black doulas, like including us, we go into this field to help our Black women. We want to help our girls, and so like Bria said, having those payment plans. I didn't go into birth work I want to help everybody, right? But I didn't go into birth work to help those that are in the suburbs and can afford like all the lavish and, have 3 doulas if they want to. I want to be able to help as many people as possible. So having those birth prep classes, Dr. Stephanie Mitchell, she just had a book come out, The First Time Parents Guide to Childbirth.
Yeah.
And so you can have resources like that. If you like, there's different things like Motherboard, I believe, and now we have the Earth without the B, the app now. So there's a lot of options out there. So just being able to reflect on how you learn best and your budget and what you need to have the birth that you want.
Yeah, I was going to say that I know I do virtual work all the time. I have virtual like courses that you can take as well. I do 2 scholarships a year, which I think a lot of doulas do that as well, where we'll do a free birth or 2, for somebody who's in need. I also think it's good to talk to like your providers about it, because part of the reason why doulas are so short is people need to demand them. Demand them from your insurance. That's kind of what happened in Florida, which you might know, Sylvia, is that we take insurance here. A lot of Medicaid now takes insurance, so I think, and that came from a demand from people requesting it, requesting it from Healthy Start, requesting it from your government program, requesting it from your practitioner. Doing that has a really big impact that you might not realize, just because they'll say, hey, a lot of people are requesting this, we should look into this. So I think it's important that you bring it up that you want it from those providers. And then again, don't be afraid to reach out to any doulas that you might see on social media and ask them if they have a virtual program or if they know a doula in the area, because we have big networks. I feel like all of us, that's what we do. And a lot of our work is very heart driven. It's not money driven. And I can totally second you guys with, I've given so much free birth advice and adjusted budgets and payment plans for a lot of my clients, because we just want you to have the birth that you deserve. And that's really it. It's not about the money. It does come later. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that you just speak up and don't be afraid to request and ask. If you're just happen to be in an area where there's no birthing centers, because that's also very common. A lot of rural areas don't have them. You can still get that virtual assistance that you need. I've done virtual births on the phone. We do that.
Yeah.
It can be helpful. So there's a lot of options for you that you might not realize, but you just have to ask.
Yeah,
definitely. I think going back, to that original question, for those women who can afford it, obviously there is a doula out there. Some of us have community organizations, like we have one called Grace House that helps homeless and teen pregnant people, and put your name on that list to volunteer, and then find that volunteer list, and don't be ashamed. I think that's the biggest thing, is like, there's no shame in needing help right where you are in the season of life. And for those of us whose hearts are in it, because this is calling work, right? Knowing, like you said, Nikki, that, you may feel like, I'm doing this quote unquote for free, but there's always blessing behind that. Whether it's in that moment, watching this woman who would not have had your care really just thrive in her birth setting, and then her postpartum, like, you're impacting lineage, right? And so when you understand that, like, this is not just about the here and now, this is not just about what goes into my bank account, but like, this is like a spiritual, emotional bank account for women and children and beyond, and then their children, right? That is the biggest thing. But I think the biggest thing for me with moms who can't afford us is always reach out and ask, but ask your care providers lots of questions. Naturally, I'm that person. Like, if you tell me something, I want to ask you why. My friends love me for it. But coming from a place of like, I want understanding. I want, knowledge is power. Like, why does a person on the other side of the desk have to hold all the power? Why does the other person on the other side of that stethoscope have to have all the power? No, it's shared. It's shared information. It's out there. So whether you find it for yourself or you ask your care provider, ask questions. Ask, how is this going to really benefit me? And not are there risks, but what are the risks associated with this? And everyone, there's some conflict around the Bring Your Brain to Birth acronym. Some people are like, don't, you should be advocating for that. And I think it's definitely a shared role. Our clients should be speaking up on their behalf. But, it's something that has been helpful for me personally, and that I do share with my clients. But what are the benefits? What are the risks? It's just BRAIN. Are there any alternatives to what you're suggesting me? Like, Bria, how you said they were like, well, we've okayed for Pitocin to happen without even asking the mom. And it's like, at that moment, you could like pop off and be like, okay, but why? But it's like, okay, what is the alternative right now? Just naturally laboring. Okay, I'll take that. Option B. And like you said earlier too, Bria, go with your gut. Like, we have this like divine knowing when we, as women, but when we become mothers, there's something powerful about it, right? That allows us to just know. And I can't tell you how many times I kick myself for never going with my gut, or on the times that I don't go with my gut. But and then knowing that you can say no. I think that's the biggest thing, like telling all moms, you can say no. They're giving you their best medical advice. They're giving you their wisdom, and it is worth something, but you still can say no, and I think that's the biggest thing. Ask questions and just say no and see what they say.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much. You guys have all been so informative and professional, and I hope that you guys stayed connected with me. I can't wait to see the work that you guys do in the future, and I hope that you all continue to walk in your purpose. You guys are amazing.
Thank you, Maxine, for having us.
Thank you, Maxine.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank
This
you.
is very important, so we appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.